we are going to discuss the integration and control of autonomic functions, and we will be describing how the cerebral cortex, brainstem, hypothalamus, and spinal cord control the activity of the autonomic nervous system. At one time, it was thought that autonomic nervous system work all on its own, that it has autonomy. In fact, that is where the name autonomic nervous system comes from. Autonomy means freedom from external control or influence of independence. But of course, now we know that it is influenced by the central nervous system. Think about how emotions, for example, lead to the production of tears, or how they can increase heart rate or respiration rate or blood pressure. These are things that are under the control of the autonomic nervous system. However, emotions come from the central nervous system, and so obviously central nervous system influences the autonomic nervous system. So let's look at the relationship between central nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Input for autonomic nervous system control is received from three principal portions of the central nervous system: the cerebral cortex via the limbic system, the hypothalamus, medulla oblongata, and of course the spinal cord. If we look at the integration centers of the autonomic nervous system reflexes, we find that they are in the brain and the spinal cord. The production of saliva and tears are autonomic nervous system reflexes. However, those are actually found in the brainstem. But autonomic nervous system reflexes that are below the neck, such as micturition, which is involved in urination, the defecation reflex, erection ejaculation, these reflex centers are all found in the spinal cord. Now, even though these reflex centers are found in the spinal cord, they do receive influence and input from the brain or the brainstem, hypothalamus, as well as the cerebral cortex. So even though the integration centers for most autonomic nervous system reflexes are found in the spinal cord, input to those reflex centers is sent from the brainstem and therefore affects those reflexes. Let's go back and look some of the reflex centers that are found in the brainstem. We call it again the multiple control centers for autonomic nervous system functions in the brainstem. For example, the cardiac center controls how fast the heart beats as well as how hard it beats, is found in the brainstem. Vasomotor control, which controls the size of the blood vessels and ultimately the blood pressure, is found in the brainstem. Production of saliva, swallowing and secretion of digestive enzymes by the gastrointestinal tract control micturition, as well as the size of the pupils. All of those control centers are found in the brainstem. So sensory input is sent to the brainstem, and motor output is sent down from the brainstem via descending fiber tract and cranial nerves to those integration centers for all of these reflexes. So the brainstem influences those reflexes even though the integration center is found in the spinal cord. Now let's move further up or superior in the brain to the diencephalon, where we have the hypothalamus. If you recall, hypothalamus is really the master of controlling visceral functions. So our book goes far to call it the boss because it essentially has descending fibers onto the brainstem that can influence all those control centers. Also recall the hypothalamus produces multiple hormones. So signals are actually sent from the hypothalamus to these control centers in the brainstem. And then signals are sent from the brainstem to those integration centers in the spinal cord. So even though the brainstem is directly affecting those integration centers, those hypothalamus controls the brainstem. So overall, it's the hypothalamus that's controlling those integration centers for those autonomic nervous system reflexes. The cerebral cortex can also influence autonomic nervous system reflexes, and we know this to be true because just to think about how far thoughts can affect autonomic nervous system reflexes, you may think of something that is scary and you have an increase in heart rate, or it increased some respiration rate, or something that you see are the process of cerebral cortex. But yet they influence your heart rate, or they cause you to tear up, or you smell something really delicious and it causes the production of saliva. So obviously, there is this connection between the cerebral cortex and autonomic nervous system functions, and that connection appears to be the limbic system. So information is sent to the cerebral cortex, output is sent from the cerebral cortex to the hypothalamus via the limbic system. So thoughts and emotions that will affect the autonomic nervous system passed to the hypothalamus via the limbic system. So this is how anger can raise blood pressure or can dilate blood vessels in your skin. How fear can raise blood pressure by increasing heart rate. You smell food, you salivate, or stomachs and intestines starts to move. Much of those emotions and thoughts originate in total of the cerebral cortex, and they influence via limbic system, the hypothalamus, which of course controls autonomic nervous system functions. Sexual thoughts, thinking about sex, images, can increase blood flow to the genitals. And anxiety, or thinking about things that are negative, can cause the opposite effects. These connections between the cerebral cortex and autonomic nervous system reflexes is via the limbic system and its impact on the hypothalamus. So let us summarize. The integration centers or most autonomic nervous system reflexes are found in the spinal cord. However, the control centers for many reflexes are found in the brainstem, so there are sensory inputs sent from spinal cord to the brainstem and motor output sent from the brainstem via descending fiber tracts, as well as some cranial nerves to those reflex centers affecting those reflexes. The hypothalamus also influences those control centers in the brainstem, which ultimately influences those reflex centers. There is also impact on the hypothalamus from the brain or from the cerebral cortex via limbic system.